We're not supposed to just be with like-minded people all the time. And in fact, that's a dangerous tendency to only hang out with the people who think like us. There's such a danger in that mindset, but we need these times of being immersed in the like-minded for the sake of encouragement, for the sake of renewal, for the sake of zeal.
In my experience, it's a good moment of what St. John Chrysostom says, and I say all the time, of comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable. Because you're encouraged towards further faith, towards conversion.
Try to just go and receive whatever is there for you to receive.
A good conference and a good retreat will actually say, I needed this rest, I needed this affirmation, I needed kind of this consolation, if you will, of creating an atmosphere that is so kind of heaven on earth.
I wouldn't say that it's for the sake of going back to the real world or our real lives. I would say this is the reality. What we're living in at a conference like Seek Conference, that's the reality that we need to be living for.
Glory to Jesus Christ. It's Jelly. I am going to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you could join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Hello, Mother.
Hello, Father. Hello, Abigail.
Hello. Thank
Abigail.
you for letting me join today.
Of course. Abigail is another one of my spiritual daughters. I promise I have spiritual sons too, but I tend to always talk about and introduce my spiritual daughters. Abigail Francis is a spiritual daughter of mine, TAC grad, worked in California, discovered our Byzantine parish, listener to the podcast, fangirl of Mother Natalia. And as we were talking,
It's all true.
And I know you better than this, and I love you, but you're like, one of your most obvious good qualities is you have the most amazing singing voice, I think, of anybody else I've ever heard in my life. She is absolutely incredible. So when she started coming to our outreach, I just said, you've been coming for 2 weeks, like, can you be our main cantor, please? Because our main time loves singing harmonies. So Ben Block. And so what Ben would do is he would start cantering, and then as soon as somebody came in, like he started the melody, as soon as someone else came in, he dropped the harmonies immediately. And I thought, okay, so this is great because Abby's here, she can take the melodies, and you leaned right in, and Abigail can read music. She has the soul and the spirit to just kind of continue on and push through. And then 1 month ago, she abandons us.
I did.
To go back to the East Coast to be near family. But it was good. I told you, Mother, about the little baby who died, the stillbirth we had. So Abby's out here we got her out here to cantor the Byzantine funeral and to see all of us and hang out a bit longer. So
Beautiful.
So we're glad to join her. And also, listeners, this is the Seek episode, as I'm sure all of you saw on the title. And Mother and I have been Byzantine longer than Abigail has. And so I asked Abigail to do some thinking about Joan of Arc, because that's the theme of Seek 2025. And so she's going to provide the Joan of Arc take. Thank you. I was going to say story, bio. I don't know what you're doing. So yeah, the Joan of Arc take, as well as our reflections upon the theme of Seek, which is Follow Me. The patron saint is Joan of Arc, and then Mother and I are going to reflect upon those things, as well as kind of give our stories from past Seeks. So anyway, it's exciting. Yeah. And I'm going to be driving Abigail to the airport right when we're done recording these next two episodes. So
kind of close, but that's how I like it.
Yeah. I also don't know. Yeah, that's normal. Welcome to hanging out with Father Michael. I also don't know. Well, I didn't ask you if this was okay, Father Michael, but it's my podcast too, so I'm just saying it. But we don't know whether or not we're doing a live recording at this Seek as we did last year. But if we are, I'm totally open to if anyone has ideas that they want to put out there of what they think would make a good episode for a live recording. So I make no promises that we will use any of the suggestions. But if you send in a suggestion of a live episode that you would think would be a good thing to do at Seek, and we really like it, and we're actually doing a live recording at Seek, then we'll use it and give you a shout out if you want. So,
do you remember what our topic was last year? Our live recording?
No, I told you. I blacked out. I was like so panicky that I don't I remember the part that I shared about the like prayer for priests thing, the litany thing that someone gave me at Seek. And that's all I remember, like everything. And I remember you being there and Father Boniface being there, and then a lot of people, and that's all. Yeah.
Well, you made me very insecure, Mother, because you were so adverse to like getting the attention of Seek. And I was like, am I just an attention hound? Like, why do I like...
That's like, not the phrase I thought you were about to use.
You made me feel really bad about myself.
Oh.
That is a phrase though, right? Hound, not the other thing.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good substitute.
Okay, yeah.
It started with the H sound, and I thought that's not where you were going. And I was like, you cannot say that.
It took me a second as well, but yeah, it doesn't take Mother a second. It comes right to her brain right immediately.
Yeah, you guys are better people than me. No, it's true. You're not wrong. I think, you know what? Here's the thing, Father Michael. Yes. I'm always talking about how I'm codependent. Which I have a funny story about that, which is that I've been reading a book. So like in all seriousness, I'm not just like, I actually struggle with codependency, as anyone who listens to this podcast can surely pick up on. So I'm not just saying like.
But what do you mean by that? Can you define your brand of?
Sure. I would say.
I'm at a therapy table right now. So what do you mean by codependent?
So probably we'll get emails from people who are correcting that this is not actually what codependency is, and maybe from Madison, who actually studied these things. But I would say, if I'm just going to like paraphrase how it plays out in my life, for me, codependency is the tendency to base my worth on the opinions, the actions, the reactions of other people. So like if I have a differing opinion from someone, then I'm like, oh, well then my opinion is wrong. And not only is my opinion wrong, but like I'm bad because I have this opinion that's clearly wrong because it's different than their opinion. Like it's just, and there's been so much growth in this over the years, as you know, Father Michael. And so there's that. But I would like to call out you for saying that I made you feel bad. Because I can't make you feel anything.
This is good.
So that's one thing I would.
You don't know how many times.
But also, like, you just did the same thing that I usually do, where you're like, wow, I have a different reaction to this thing than she does. And so is there something wrong with me? Like, that was very Mother Natalia of you.
But I also, as I was saying that.
You're like, that's not true.
No. Well, no, as I was saying it, I was thinking, well, let me go back in my head a second. I was thinking, I'm going to correct what I said to make myself look good. So I'm going to finish the story. I don't think I'm an attention hound because I was something else. So I kind of threw this straw man into the mix and said, okay, here's the bad Father Michael. And then I'm going to correct it to show that I'm actually not that bad. So it wasn't, I was using you and I was using our beautiful audience to make myself feel better. So basically, let me finish what I was saying
really,
so you can truly judge me. So I thought, what if I am, and I probably am a little bit, just as the attention feels kind of nice at things like Seek, where I'm here. I mean, Abigail loves me and most of my parishioners love me, but they don't, it's much a deeper love they have for their pastor rather than the very surface, like people are taking pictures of us, then they think they're being secret about it, or people are asking us for selfies.
You guys get that a lot.
Oh, it's Seek, it's Seek. So it is kind of funny. So those things are they're nice every once in a while, especially since I live here in LA. Like you just see it and you think, what would that be like? And I was like, for 3 days, that's what it's like. But so that is nice. But I think what it is for me is that when we are up on that little platform podcasting at Seek, you realize that we do have people listening, because when you and I just record, it's just you and I talking. We have somewhere in the back of our mind that we know there's an audience. We know there's people listening. And oftentimes when I think, okay, it's right now there's a mother folding laundry, listening to us. There's someone jogging. There's someone driving in their car. There's someone, doing these things. But those are just very distant ideas. And I know that I may be wrong. I'm just kind of making these things up in my mind. But when you sit there and you're looking at people's faces and you're there and I'm there and we see each other face to face, which we do when we get to record live. But you see the reactions from people. I want to make them laugh. I can see when they're bored. I mean, I do this when I preach, of course. And it's nice because it feels like a combination up there of preaching and podcasting. And doing both. So I do think, what did Josiah say to me last time? Basically, somebody said, what was the criticism? There was some criticism that every podcaster, I think it was speaks too fast, or no, speaks too loud. That was it. Every podcaster at Seek last year was speaking too loud. They were like yelling because they were like, it was almost like when I preach, I don't have a microphone. So I preach the volume that my people need to hear. Now, what's funny is that I almost always have one child, especially at the outreach where Abigail was parishioner. I almost have one kid that just starts like plugging their ears. I'm preaching because I'm kind of yelling, because I'm preaching to the kids that are right in front of me, but I'm trying to make every adult in our little church here as well. So I know I'm talking loud. So Josiah came up to me and said, I think Matt Pratt had already podcasted or something. And Josiah came to me and said, just be careful because you're talking into the mic. You're not talking to the audience. So speak slowly like you in a podcast. And then while you and I were recording last year, Mother, I'm in my head, I'm going, I'm yelling. I'm totally yelling, but I didn't know how to do it any differently, except I'd like slow down for a while. And then I said at the end, because Josiah, as you know, is very blunt as well. And I said, I was told not to yell. And he goes, again, you yelled the whole time. Yep. I was like, if Mother yelled, do not tell her, because she will feel bad about it. She'll want to not put it out. She'll want to never do it again, ever. So just if she yelled, let her just be under the impression that all went perfectly well. And I want to thank you, though, for critiquing me, because my pride needs a little it was actually pretty bad, Father.
My pride needs it too, though. That's the thing. Like, this is what is so frustrating that people misunderstand all the time, is they think that because of these things, I'm humble. But it's not humility. I'm like the most prideful person I know. And I just need people to understand that. Yeah, I need them to understand that because I'm prideful.
No, it is funny because Abigail and dear listeners, like, she's my spiritual daughter. So like, I know her heart inside.
I know she's prideful.
I know all the things that, like, all the tendencies and things like that. And it is an interesting thing. We've gotten quite a bit of feedback in the past 4 years now about how does it work out when I know everything about her and she doesn't know everything about me, even though I do overshare with her because I trust her completely. But I overshare more than most spiritual fathers probably do with their spiritual daughters. But there is still this, it is a difference. I know the depths of her heart, and she doesn't know the depths of mine because I have a spiritual director that I go to. And so it does make podcasting interesting because I can't, thank God she has a good sense of humor, and she is humble enough to kind of take it, because I can throw these little jabs at her that probably come from spiritual direction. She knows they come from spiritual direction. She somehow doesn't mind me saying it because it makes for interesting conversation. And then she throws things
because
at me.
I say these things. I wouldn't Anyways.
But there is a certain care. There is a certain care I have for your heart, Mother, that I'm probably more careful not to share things since I know more.
Yeah.
And because I don't want you to be misunderstood. And that's another thing, is that we may have listeners that listen maliciously. You know, that there are people that what do they call it, a hate follow on social media. Like you follow someone because you hate them and you just want to get mad. So you go to their page just to kind of have that emotion of getting mad. But we may have hate followers. I don't know. So we should be careful. I assume everybody loves you, Mother, and I assume everybody loves me, which is probably pretty close to the case, actually. Just because actually, so we're gonna have. We were just talking.
We do have really, really sweet listeners. Like
we do. Yeah. But I'm looking forward to. There was a guest. I won't name who it is. There was a guest that you and I just talked about before we hit record that we're gonna have on soon.
Oh yeah.
And when I talked to her about, would you ever want to come on, and because I would love for you to talk about these things. She started out by saying, and I'll give it all, this is a teaser for her episode. She started out by saying, the first few episodes I listened to, it wasn't my choice. Someone else in the car was listening and I had to listen. And she said, and I hated it. Yeah. She says, I absolutely hated it. And I'll let her go into why she went from hating it to loving it, And so, and it's a really beautiful kind of conversion moment that's like in the heart. And then more of a, like, it wasn't obviously us, but it was our style on this podcast that she kind of had her heart softened to that Jesus may be working in our style of conversation. So anyway, Mother, let's
can I say just a very quick thing
of course.
That I forgot that this is what I was going to say when I brought up the codependency thing. Was just so funny to me. You didn't. I just got distracted. I have been reading a book about codependency that someone recommended to me, and it's been really great. But I'm just like, because of life and things, I'm just going through it so slowly, and way more slowly than I need to. and a friend who also is like self-diagnosed codependent, she knows that I'm reading this book, and she was like, I have an idea. What if we read the book together so that we can actually like do it and we can talk about the things and so on and so forth? And I was just like, the irony that we're like, let's read this book about codependency together. But that's not actually codependent. And I think we're actually going to do that, and it will be helpful. It just was a funny thought. Yeah.
I was going to say, you're if you are codependent, and I am not going to diagnose you, of course. If you are codependent, it is not, you are not the manipulative kind. Because when I think of codependency, in my false diagnoses as well, but I think of someone who needs to be important in somebody else's life, and they decide that they're going to be, so they try to earn the love and respect of the person. And if that manipulation doesn't work, then they want the wrath or the anger. Basically, I need to affect your life. I need you to be dependent upon me some way, and I'm going to manipulate until it happens for good or bad. So that is not you at all, Mother. So I kind of cringe when I hear you say codependent, because whatever it is of you, the form that you just talked about of, kind of putting other people's opinions above yours, I think most people do that at some point in their life and to a certain extent. So,
I think most people are probably codependent to some extent.
I was about to say, sounds like after all this, I'm codependent. That's not what I was expecting to get out of the banter, but here we are.
Spiritual direction for you too, Abigail, I guess. Yeah.
All of our listeners are also it's probably all wrong. Probably everything I just said about codependency is wrong. But
we have unfortunately not continued with our here's all the mistakes we made on the last episode section of our podcast. So anyway,
we'll do that when I have to make corrections about what codependency actually is.
Well, we need to find a way of convincing Madison to come on, and that may be it. Just correct all of our misdiagnoses.
Like, let's actually talk about codependency. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I corrected you well enough. We can move on.
Okay. Please.
About the fact that you're not manipulative at all. Okay. So, Mother, this is interesting because last time when we did our Seek episode, you had never been to Seek. Oh, no, you had. I take that back.
I had never been to Seek.
Okay.
That's true. I had been to like the National Focus Conference.
Back when you were in college.
Back when it was, and then I went one time when I was with Simple House.
Okay.
And that might have been like the Student Leader Summit thing that they anyways, I had never been one, so it became Seek. Yeah.
Okay. And you had never.
And when I went, it was like a huge crowd. When I was in college, it was like this huge crowd of like 4,000 people or something.
Okay. Well,
and now it's like 20,000 is the difference.
I see. Yes. So, I was going to say, it's probably bigger now. It certainly is bigger now.
Yeah.
So I think we did talk about, Mother, a couple of your experiences, because you had such a good experience this past year. And I know we even recorded a couple episodes that were not on the Seek stage, but just in side rooms with Kristen and things like that. But would you want to go first in your experiences of Seek and how it ties to? So basically Seek has asked us to share our experiences of past Seeks, our excitement for the new ones, and then I think more importantly for the listeners of this podcast that are not able to go to Seek, is going to be the theme "Follow Me," which is the theme for this year's Seek, and then how the patroness of this year's Joan of Arc, who's Joan of Arc. So I know Abigail also.
I would like to embrace the theme and follow you and let you go first.
I get it. Okay, so. Seek is a place, in my experience, where it's kind of going from, I hate to put it this way, I'm going to throw your and my alma mater under the bus, Abigail.
Please do.
So when Thomas Aquinas College, where Abigail graduated from and I did not graduate from, Thomas Aquinas College is a place where I would go back now, or even when I was 27 years old, and I would have thrived. It would have been such an amazing place to take 4 years to not only read the great books, which anybody can do from home, but sit with your peers and a tutor who guides you and actually draw the wisdom out. But at 18, I was just not ready for that. Not ready for it all after public school and all that. So I needed to leave that, and probably should have come back and go to Steubenville, where I could be a 19-year-old kid, and where the faith and the intellectual life, it was assumed you're not good at this yet. It's assumed let's encourage you in my very immature faith and very immature intellectual life. Let me encourage you in these ways. So it became, it's very, the theology and the experiences of Seek are very encouraging, and they draw it out. And one of the biggest things that I hear from others is just to see the speakers are amazing, the music is amazing, the podcasts are great, and then you have all these peers that are there that you see, and they look like normal kids, and yet they're on fire for our Lord, and it's very much a retreat experience. So I very much liked being part of that. I can walk around in my cassock, and I know I'm not going to get any jeers. I'm not going to get any people questioning me, or somebody said one time, I think this is not too odd. I had to think about it for a second, but I was at a brewery one time wearing my cassock, and this guy just walks up to me, and how did he say it? He said, he says, "Is that faith or fetish?"
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was like,
that's disgusting.
It was totally creepy. And I said, like, that you when you walk around your cassock, like, you get creepy people and weird people that say weird things. And at Seek, that just doesn't happen. You see I don't know if you noticed last night, I gave a talk, Mother, we had a worship night at Tom Fry's house. And so I gave a talk, and it was so beautiful because I gave the talk, and then I kind of walked to the back of the space because they were going to start doing worship, praise and worship. And I walked to the back of the space, and like 7 little kids just ran up to me to give me a hug. And I thought these kids are kids I know from families I know, but it was the most affirming thing when you give a talk that the kids just wanted to come up and give you a hug. I didn't even cry during the talk. That's rare. I didn't even cry during the talk. Like, usually the kids are like, "Oh, let me go give you a hug." I'm crying. Maybe I did cry a little bit. I don't remember. I don't think I did. A little bit. Okay. But anyway, so there was that. That's kind of what Seek is. You walk around and you get affirmed. I walk around in my cassock. I'm only affirmed. Mother, you walk around in your habit. Of course, you get affirmed. There's so many priests, so many nuns, so many bishops walking around. So it's kind of a place of rest and zeal, because you can rest in the affirmation, and yet there's also an encouragement towards the zeal. It's honestly, it's a good, in my experience, it's a good moment of what St. John Chrysostom says, and I say all the time, of comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable, because you're encouraged towards further faith, towards conversion, by the talks and by the kind of being inspired by the people around you who you say, oh my gosh, this person is much holier than me, I want to be like them. And yet you're encouraged to do that, not jealous or envious. And yet you also feel very comforted, especially by the talks. The talks are always very comforting as well, and affirming and reminding of God's love and things like that. They should have Mother Ileana give a talk about her book.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, Light of His Eyes, which is an amazing book that Mother Ileana wrote, a nun from Christ Bridegroom. But anyway, so that's, I think, my favorite part of Seek is encountering that comfort for the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, and then knowing that as a priest, I can just walk around and people can go to confession. You can get, the people will get a blessing. They just want to say hi. They say, well, why are you wearing that type of cassock? Because I'm wearing a Byzantine cassock rather than a Roman one. Anyway, there's a lot of that is just a few days of rest and conversion and growth at the same time, and meeting people. So if you all haven't been to Seek, and you can go, I would, and I'm not just saying this because Seek asked us to do this episode, but I really do think my nephew went last year and absolutely loved it. He's an athlete. He's a cross country runner, and an engineer. He's an engineering student, and he went there and absolutely loved it. I honestly thought, well, I'm going to go see him every day and we're going to hang out a lot. Nope. He did his own thing. He was making friends. He was with his friends. He was going to all the talks, all the conferences. It was great.
He and I were really excited to see each other.
Amen. Amen. So shout out to Ryan O'Loughlin, who was there as well.
Yeah, I've not been. I've not had the opportunity to go, but that's always been what's drawn me to it. Growing up in the South, like Bible Belt, and in the military, not really surrounded by Catholic kids my age. And if I was, it was for a short amount of time or just on Sundays. And so I've always been drawn to an environment of, here are people my age, like-minded, all pursuing the same goal, all wanting to learn. So yeah, going to the talks and learning, not just going to show forth our own virtue or our own practices of faith, but seeing everyone else's and learning from everyone else's has always appealed to me.
I also think Seek has done a good job, in my experience, of basically preparing those who attend to leave and to go back to their real life. So, a lot of times when we talk about retreats, we go on a retreat and then it doesn't really prepare us to go back to the real world. We just want to be on a retreat again. Yeah. And so, a good retreat will do that. It's a retreat, but a good conference and a good retreat will actually say, I needed this rest. I needed this affirmation. I needed kind of this consolation, if you will, of creating an atmosphere that is so kind of heaven on earth-ish, if you will. And yet I also am excited to take what I've learned, how I've grown, how I feel, my maturity, my faith, and go back out to whatever I'm doing in the world, back to my college campus or something. There is one thing to say, though. I never went to these when I was in college. I didn't even know they existed. And maybe they didn't. Actually, I'm old. I forgot. I never went to, but I never went to a Steubenville conference, even though I was at Steubenville and things like this. I never went to those things because they were all in the summer. But I remember thinking, when I was young, you can kind of go to these events with an insecurity. You feel lonely and there's a lot of people and they all seem cooler than you, and you're crushing on certain people that are there or whatever it is, and they're ignoring you because there's cooler people there. There's all kinds of feelings that you have when you're in high school and college that can come up at an event like this too. That's why I was so glad to see my nephew who was just in his element, making friends, being with friends like that. He's just a much cooler and more outgoing kid than I was at his age. But it was also just cool to see that. And I would encourage you, if you are going to Seek, you will probably see a couple people that are kind of off on their own, isolated, trying to get the bearings of a really fun, cool place, and being insecure that they're not experiencing kind of the heights of what people normally experience at these things. And and if you're an extrovert, I have I'll throw him under the bus and shout him out. But Willie Peacock, who is such a he was a parishioner of mine in Denver, just an amazing man. But he would always say, all my friends. He said, I'm such an introvert. All my friends are extroverts that just decided to have me as a friend. Like he said, I'm so introverted.
Including his wife.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's true. That they basically, all my friends are people to sought me out because I was just there. And then the extrovert said, hey, what's your name? And now all of a sudden we're best friends. That's kind of how it is. And so I would say if you have that skills, or if you're an introvert and see another introvert and you want to just say, hey, you want to get coffee? Do you want to go to this event together? You want to stand next to me while we listen to somebody else? Hey, who knows? But this event, I think, it's like Christmas. Christmas is such an objectively joyful thing, but it's also the beginning of one of the seasons of a heightened suicide rate, because people are saying, I should be feeling joyful. I should have family around me. I should be living out this moment of great nostalgia that was so joyful as a kid. And now as an adult, I'm able to offer it to my kids or enjoy it or just, go walk around, and it's not. And they feel so out of place because Christmas is supposed to be the happiest time of the year. And here I am just completely depressed. So I don't know. My pastoral heart is saying, be open to, if you go to Seek or events like Seek, be open to those who know they should be experiencing like immense joy and Christ's presence and his faith and growing. And some people will not, and try to bring them in and be Christ's hands and voice in their life if you can.
Great. I'm glad that y'all went first, because I have something to say about what Abigail said and something to say about what you said and something of my own and a piece of advice. I have lots of things, which is atypical when it's your episode. When it's your episode, you say all these brilliant things and I'm just like, So
it's so true. I'm just kidding.
No, but really. Totally Abigail, I really appreciated what she said about being with the like-minded people. And I think that, that's part of my experience with it as well. That was my big experience of the Focus conference that I went to back in college. And I was only just coming back into the church. I had only just gone to Mass for the first time in years, all of these things when I went to the conference. And for me, I've talked about this on other episodes, on my Whence Mother Natalia Came episode, and then also an old Seek episode or something. So I'll just give the brief version of this. But for me, it was very much, I wasn't yet like-minded with these people, and I wanted to be. Like, that's part of what drew me in. That was the afflicting the comfortable, maybe, except I was not comfortable in any way whatsoever. But it was like, I saw this joy all around me, and I was like, I want that joy. And the only thing that all of these people have in common is Jesus, because they are all so different. And so Jesus is the thing, So it was the like-minded nature of it made me want to be of like mind, and that drew me into it. And I was thinking a similar thing to what you were, Father Michael, about going back to our life at home after Seek conference, because like we're not supposed to just be with like-minded people all the time. And in fact, that's a dangerous tendency that we have, is to only hang out with the people who think like us. And then we become closed-minded. We don't learn how to embrace other people's opinions and ideas. We don't learn how to love people who aren't like us. Like, there's such a danger in that mindset, but we need these times of being immersed in the like-minded for the sake of encouragement, for the sake of renewal, for the sake of zeal. I think the thing that I would disagree with, and I'm just being nitpicky. Don't worry, now I'm switching to Father Michael, Abigail. I didn't disagree with anything that you said. The thing that I would disagree with, though, and I know this isn't what you, anyways, I'm just being a stinker, but I wouldn't say that it's for the sake of going back to the real world or our real lives, I would say this is the reality. Like what we're living in at a conference like Seek Conference, that's the reality that we need to be living for, because it's this taste of heaven and it's this taste of communion with people who understand and are receptive to the love of the Lord. And it's a taste of like the reality that we forget when we're in our quote unquote normal life, right? So it's like, it's kind of like we're living the reality and we need to bring the reality back with us.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I understand what you meant, and I'm just being a stinker. But.
And that's really beautiful, because I think that, kind of going back to our probably misdiagnosis of codependency, there are people that because they have not had the good experience, because they don't have the experience of reality, that kind of a beautiful Christ-centered, charity-centered, truth, beauty, and goodness-centered culture or community has, they have had to invent in their own mind what that looks like. They've had to say, here's what that must look like. And then when they get invited to something, because of their brokenness, because of lack of experience, they tend, if they have one form of this, to demand it. And that's where the manipulation comes from. I'm going to demand that I have this good experience. And so it's, in a sense, I want to, when I go back to the unreal world, according to your definition, Mother, if I go back to where I am most of the time, I want to bring people up that mountain. I want to say, let me walk with you and Christ, and we'll go up this mountain to where this is. But there has to be such a softening of their heart and my heart to say, it's unexpected. It's not what I want. It's beyond that. So if someone's demanding in their tendency to manipulate, that they want to demand that they have this experience, and then they don't, there has to be a trust. So, and that's what all of us are broken in this way. But when we go to events like that kind of manifest what our culture and the reality should be, we want to invite people in. And I think that's, anybody who may disagree with you, Mother, on no, this is the real world, that's a little experience of an ivory tower, and then you go back to the real world. It's like, no, but because the people that you're saying are in the real world that are not like those on the ivory tower, they want that too. I mean, they want the beauty of it. So if we just accepted that as the reality and never went to the ivory tower, we would never know what we can invite people into. I was doing some talking yesterday with some friends because something came up recently. I won't share the details of, but it's interesting how different political realities, and of course I'm not going to go into this, but what is when you have a culture like a parish, do you basically move the parish in a direction so that those who are living the exception become the norm? Or do you live the norm of Christ so you can draw those who are living the exceptions into who Christ is? And it's hard, because I think this is what the church has done for a long time. And I really don't want to go into this. I'm just going to say this and then I think we're done. But the church has basically said, if we want people to understand God, and if most people are only capable of understanding God at a third grade level, we're just going to that's all we're going to do. We're going to teach our seminarians to preach at a third grade level. We're going to have our textbooks, our high school textbooks, be a third grade level. And basically we brought down the beauty of the church so that it's understandable to everybody, rather than saying, let's raise up those adults who are only doing third grade theology to something higher, and then allow the individual situations to happen so that you can have individual exceptions that you need to work with. Do you have thoughts, Abby?
Well, what you just said was like what we were talking about the other day of like, I just had a really skewed understanding of hell and judgment because I like never got out of that third grade mindset of like very strict understandings of this is right, this is wrong, this is what it's going to look like, which is like, as a child, that's what helps you understand like how to not sin, just like very set rules, but just never got out of that. And so becoming a young adult and realizing that I'm like terrified of judgment because I think that I'm going to go up to the chair of St. Peter. He's going to have a checklist and be like, you're one sin over. Like, off you go. Yeah. And it's like, no, but I tried. But I know, Mother, you said that you had like the 3 points. You said something to say about what I said, something to say about what Father said, something of your own, and then a piece of advice. But I wanted to ask.
You have such a good memory.
Thank you.
Compared to me, absolutely.
What you were saying about going in not like-minded, I guess I'm asking for advice at this point. Not from a place of like, I don't think I personally, where I'm at in my faith, need this advice, but what would you say to someone who is almost like afraid of the like-minded people, like realizing that they're on the outside, they want to go to Seek or an event like this, but they already anticipate like being on the outside of the like-minded people,
being judged or looked down upon?
Yeah, that's a great question. It actually ties pretty well into my piece of advice. So,
awesome.
Because the piece of advice that I was going to give, and I'll bring this back to your question, don't worry, is Father Michael, like when he was talking about the Christmas experience, for instance, and this, or the experience of some people feeling isolated and, or feeling like I should be feeling this and whatever, my piece of advice would be, despite listening to these podcasts, that like part of our goal in this recording, for the sake of transparency, is to get people excited for Seek. Again, not because, just like Father Michael was saying, like not just because Seek asked us to record this and we're just like trying to sponsor Seek conference or something like that, but like because we think it's a good and we think people should experience it. And so we want to get people excited for it. But if you're listening to all of these, episodes on the getting excited for Seek and things like that, I don't want you to then, my advice would be, don't go to Seek with particular expectations, right? Like, don't go with the expectation of, I'm going to have this same experience that these people are talking about. I'm going to have this same whatever prayer moment, this same, like, just don't go with expectations as best as you can, and have an open heart to whatever the Lord wants to give you at Seek. And so the reason I think that relates is because I wasn't going to the conference. Well, I was going to the conference because I had a crush on a boy, and because it was in Florida, and so I was like, I can like go to as few things as required and then hang out at the beach for the rest of the time and whatever. So I had God uses all for good for those who love him. No, I didn't love him yet, but he used it for good anyways. So some part of me loved him. That's the truth. But I would say, like, don't even go expecting to be outcast. Don't go expecting to be judged. Don't go... try to just go and receive whatever is there for you to receive, and to not build up certain things. And because then you might just be pleasantly surprised, as opposed to like setting yourself up for some sort of, because also when we go in driven by our fears and only expecting our fears, then we can start to see everything through that lens. And there can be this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of like, well, I knew everyone was going to judge me and nobody asked me to eat lunch with them. As opposed to like, what if you just, so I don't know, try to have an open mind and more importantly, an open heart. 'Cause it's not even like, I want people, it's even less about the open mind of, giving people the benefit of the doubt as you're listening to talks and things like that, but much more so the open heart of being open to whatever the experience is that you have, and not feeling ashamed if your experience is different than other people. So, does that make sense? Connecting that to something you said at the very beginning of the podcast, which is like, everyone is so self-absorbed that no one's even probably looking at you. exactly. Yeah.
And that can be actually a hard realization. I mean, it can be so freeing sometimes when, no one, and I've learned this about homilies when I preach and I think it was bad. And then I start beating myself up and then I say, they're on to the next thing. Like, even if they were like, oh my gosh, Father, that was horrible. We're already praying again. They should be on to the next thing. And I need to be on to the next thing. And you go on and you realize Jesus is talking to them in a million ways, not just my homily. It's like they're thinking about my homily the whole week and analyzing. It's like, oh, get over yourself, So there's there is a sense of we do think for better or for worse. God uses it that we are more the center of attention than we actually are for other people. Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting thing with codependence is because, this is the codependence episode, misinformed codependence. But there is something like that's what you really desire. You, in the form of codependence I mentioned with manipulation, you desire that somebody's thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you. That's kind of what you want. And you're gonna manipulate in a sense to get that reality. Which is, of course, not the version that you have, Mother. Sorry, we have our landscaper seemed to come on Monday this week instead of Thursday. So
that's fine. Okay, I want to share one thing about my experience of Seek, and then if we have some time to hear anything about Joan of Arc, that would be great.
Typical.
And I mean, we could also, I don't know, maybe as I'm sharing this experience, you can be processing, Father Michael. If you think we need to do a whole second episode or something, then the next one can be that. But I guess what I wanted to share of my experience of Seek last year, because I think, again, like we've recorded other episodes in other years about my experience of old Seek and things like that. And when I was in college and whatever, which was so long ago, I graduated college 12 years ago. That feels really crazy. Are you going to say how long ago you graduated, Father Michael?
I don't even know, but it's double that.
Do you know what year you graduated? 2005.
I do.
19.
I know I got ordained in 2005.
You didn't graduate in 2005?
I graduated seminary in 2005.
Right. When did you graduate
college
undergrad?
in 2001.
Wow, 23 years.
Yeah.
I was looking at the video of your homily at my tonsure in 2016 from 8 years ago, and you look so much younger. It's crazy. Okay, so anyways, my experience of Seek last year was just, it was so healing and so affirming, but not just affirming in the way that you were talking about, Father Michael. There was absolutely the affirmation of just like, oh man, people affirmed me for the whole, however, 3 days that I was there or something like that. It was totally overwhelming, but affirming of my vocation, affirming of not just my vocation as a nun, but my vocation as a nun at Christ the Bridegroom Monastery, and even more specifically as Mother Natalia, like the mission that I feel the Lord has really put on my heart. He was able to show me in my time at Seek the ways that he's like actually working through me in that mission. And that was really beautiful and affirming and validating and all of that. But the most important aspect of it for me was the encounter, which I know you talked about a little bit, Father Michael, and Abigail as well, but encounter with particular people. Like, I didn't know before going to Seek that like a lot of people know who I am. It was
I knew.
Yeah, well, I didn't. And because I'm just like here at the monastery. And then I go to Seek and suddenly it's like, I just am walking 20 feet to the bathroom and 30 people stop me to say, and it's just like, it was very overwhelming and very, I had to every once in a while, like run and hide, as you know, Father Michael. And because I loved meeting the people, but I just was so overwhelmed by like the goodness and by like, who do these people think I am? Because I'm not that, like, yeah, all of the insecurities were like full blown. But
if I couldn't find you, I'd just go find Father Boniface's booth, and you were curled up in the fetal position in the back
basically.
of the booth.
I mean, that is not much of an exaggeration.
Well, not to take away from the personal encounter that others had with you, I'm sure, because as Father pointed out in the beginning, I had my own little personal fangirl moment when I met you. But I'll also speak to this, I didn't grow up around religious. Thankfully, I got to go to EWTN a lot growing up.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I probably saw a lot more nuns and priests than a lot of young Catholic people do in their lives. But I just imagine like being overwhelmed and freaking out by how many religious, consecrated monastics, priests, like you see all in one place. And just like wanting to be in their presence and wanting to speak with them and like, hear all of that. So
there's a lot of that at Seek. There's like hundreds of priests, 400 something like that priests.
And so I talked about how scary and overwhelming it was, but it was so deeply beautiful. Like every encounter, and most of the encounters had to be brief, right? Like just by necessity, because you're in between talks, there's not much, whatever. But to have even like a 5-minute encounter with someone, a 2-minute encounter with someone, and to hear a little bit about someone else's life and to have them open their heart, like people would just go so deep with me so quickly because they know this is going to be a brief encounter. And so they just crack open their hearts and let me see so much, which is it's just humbling and it's beautiful. And it's, and that encounter is just like, that was my experience of what you were describing of the live recording, Father Michael. That was my experience in these one-on-one encounters is like you and I record and I can maybe be thinking, someone's folding laundry while they're listening to this or whatever, but it's so abstract. But I was meeting people who listen to the podcast. And even if we're not talking about the podcast, if we're talking about their life, I now have a face of like, and I now see a heart that I'm speaking to, you know? So the next time I record, it's like, I can remember this person's heart and more intentionally speak to that, as opposed to like this vague, abstract, whatever.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I think that's what that is, I think, even more intimidating in a good way, like the fear of God intimidating of running into the people that then share that, just not the group that's watching the live recording, but the individuals who will come and share a story. I just got a DM the other day on Instagram from a guy that was, I mean, I haven't been on Catholic Live, you should know, for, 5 years. And he's listening to old episodes, and he was just sharing these amazing things that he got from the episodes from Catholic stuff. I thought, man, the Spirit really does take these things, any podcast, and at any time, anybody can listen to it. The Spirit puts it where it needs, and the message gets out there. So, all right, before we finish up, you started telling me, Abigail, your story about Joan of Arc. And if you could just give a 5-minute, especially how it may relate to Follow Me, but which is the theme of Seek 2025. But just what your thoughts on Joan of Arc, since she is the patroness of this year's Seek.
Yeah, so I don't have my phone with me, which is where I put all my little notes and information. So I will pull from memory. And just generally, we're running through like the actual facts of her story before going into like what she can mean for others. At the age of 12 or 13, she started hearing the voices of Saint Catherine, Saint Margaret, and Saint Michael the Archangel. Young French peasant girl, age 12 or 13, starts hearing the voices of these saints. And they tell her that she's the one that's supposed to help save France from the English, to get the English out of France and crown the Dauphin Charles VII, who wasn't king yet. So at age 16, or maybe she got that very specific message at 16, reaches out to the garrison commander of the French army and just goes and is like,
16-year-old girl.
Hey, I'm here to help. And he's like, okay, sure.
That's cute, honey.
Yeah. But then she predicts something. I forget all the details, but she predicts like the end of a siege or a siege. She predicts some battle movement. And it's confirmed days later, and they realize that the timing of it all, how far away removed she was by the time, like, she wouldn't have been able to know that. So then it's confirmed that, oh, like she's getting something. And long story short, she joins the French army. They like take her to the king. She helps, I believe, save Orleans from the English. And she participated. She never used her sword. She always carried a banner. She never desired to do anything but like lead and be present. And I believe every battle she was at, they ended in victory. And then the last battle that she participated in, she was kidnapped by, or taken, not kidnapped, captured, but taken by by Burgundy, and then eventually sold to the English. And there she was tried, and her trial was really biased and messed up. People were threatened. Wasn't a fair trial. She was accused of witchcraft and heresy, and eventually was burned at the stake, and died. And that was, I believe, I don't know how old she was, but she was still young. And then her trial continued after she died. Or maybe it was like a trial on her trial because people realized that it was done unfairly, unjustly. But yeah, so the image of her, like the very classic image of her in armor on a horse, short hair, cross-dressing came up in her biography because that was an offense. Like that was actually used against her at her trial. Like you've been dressed as a man on a number of occasions. And I believe those charges ended up being dropped because they were used in, like, she was wearing that for battle or for safety or things like that. But yeah, she's always depicted as a soldier on a horse, banner, leader, savior of France. And just to speak a little bit on, how that fits with Follow Me. There's a quote that I don't know by memory, but it's essentially she's saying, like, I'd rather be at home. Like, I'd rather be a young girl at home, but this is what the Lord's calling me to do. And so this is where I'll be. And as a young girl, I was telling Father before this, I remember going to, my mother had like a weekly adoration shift, and on occasion I would go with her, and there was a little Joan of Arc book that I could only ever read when I was there because they had to stay in the adoration chapel. And so I would read it a little bit each time. And absolutely no offense to you, Mother, but as a young girl, a lot of the female saints were always nuns. And there was always this like, but what if I'm not? Like, what if I end up not being a nun? And it seemed like they were always either nuns or they died like 12-year-old virgins. I was like, but what if I don't do that either? Like what if...
Dude, I'm 13 now.
These are my two options. And there's something to Joan's story of like, well, I'm not called to be a warrior woman saving a whole country, but like here she is doing something so radically different, not only from the other saints that I would read about, but just, a 16-year-old girl as a leader of the French army. That's so different and so radical. And in a way, something that I can aspire to, of just taking the call that I hear, that I've been given, and doing it even to the point of death, even if it's not literal, actual death. And I say that, and it's funny because I've listened to previous podcasts and how you guys have talked about the meaning of literal and actual. But just realizing that like here's a saint that I can look to, and like this is another option of just another path of how I can follow the Lord.
It's interesting because the aspect of follow me when Christ calls us to our vocations, Joan of Arc would literally like the Old Testament prophets who was saying something good and true, because she was like a prophet. She was speaking about things that were happening other places or things that hadn't happened yet. This was the voice of God speaking through her. And yet she only said things that were true, and she was killed by those who said that was false, who called her a witch. Like, how is she getting these evil messages when they weren't? They were good messages, but they called her a witch when she wasn't. She was actually a prophet. And how frustrating that can be when we follow God's will and seem to get persecuted for it, even by our own church. I mean, that's one of the things about Joan of Arc's story, is that she was killed by representing a Catholic country by a Catholic country. I mean, these were Catholics killing Catholics. People say the same thing about the Orthodox in Ukraine and Russia. You know, these are Orthodox killing Orthodox. And so it's hard to see this, but to say sometimes we follow Christ, and it does not mean because we do what Jesus says that we're going to be respected by the world. As any pious person knows, it's usually the opposite. And Joan is a great example of that. And do we say, I treasure following Christ and the truth and the beauty and the goodness that go along with that, even if that is not understood, even to go back again to the manipulation. You know, you can. Well, I had someone that I ministered to for a long time, and I would tell them all the time, one day you'll learn that I love you. No, you don't. You hate me. You treat me less. Whatever.
This is Mother Natalia.
It was not Mother Natalia. But and I would just say, like, one day you'll know that I love you. Like I can't force you to know that. But one day you will realize, and I hope they do now. If they're listening, they know who I'm talking about, because that was our constant conversation. I think they do now. Thank God.
Yeah. The thing that, sorry, I know we need to end. I just want to say this one quick thing about what Abigail shared, because what struck me as you were speaking is I heard the phrase follow me, and immediately, of course, I'm thinking of Jesus saying to the disciples, follow me. And I imagine that's what the theme is. And Joan of Arc followed him. And that was her only motivation, is following what he's asking of her, as you shared. But the image that you shared of just her riding with nothing but the banner, like she's holding up this banner and she's telling everyone, follow me. Like she's encouraging, she's leading. And this is the beauty of the saints, is one of the beauties of the saints is we're called to follow them. And of course, we're called to follow the Lord ultimately, right? But that's the thing, is like, it's not even like Joan is saying, follow me. She's saying, follow him with me. Like, follow me in order to follow him. I want to lead you to him. I want to walk with you towards him. And that's what the saints do for us. So anyways, I just love that image of her with the banner, and like, she's basically saying to them, like, follow me, let's go, let's do this. So
like St. Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. She's saying, follow me as I follow Christ. And she sees herself in that role. That's beautiful.
So,
all right, we are at time. So if you'll think, Abigail, of a prayer intention, please. Yes. And anything else, Mother or Abigail, before we go? Any last thoughts? Okay, excellent.
I've pulled up Patreon. So.
Oh, well, thank you. So thank you all for listening. Those of us who are just listening to our podcast, and any new listeners we have, because of Seek puts this out also on their platform. Yes, we are on all the platforms. God bless technology. We just upload it and it sends it out to everything. And we are now on YouTube with video. God bless Bree Solstat and her dedication to making sure that we didn't just talk the talk, but we actually walk the walk. And as many times as I said, we'll be on video one day, Bree's was like, let me just do it. And I was like, okay. And she's doing an absolutely amazing job. Thank God. And so now we're on YouTube as well with video. We have a website, whatgodisnot.com. We have a email address if you want to contact us, whatgodisnotpodcast@gmail.com. We have a Goodreads page where you can see what we're reading. We can see what you're reading, moderated by our amazing Beth, who keeps an eye on all that and shares all these things. We have a nonprofit called Photina, Photina, and you put an org on that and you can see our website. And we also have a Patreon, Patreon. You can just Google that or put our name in there. It's not Googling when it's on Patreon. Find our page, and then you can see all the different ways of the levels of giving. So you support the church, the poor, our podcast, our evangelization, and then we can give back a little bit through the various levels that we have. And one of those levels is getting a shout out. So we are, I think, almost all caught up on our hundreds of Patreons. Thank you so much. And Mother's going to have a few more to give a shout out to now.
Also, the shout out is a benefit of all of the, I think. Yeah, it's all of them.
So even if you give on the $1 a month level, you still get a shout out. So thank you all.
And after this, we do need to shift to giving shout outs to those who are monthly donors through Donor Box. But we still have a few more to catch up on Patreon. So thank you to Michael M. from Louisiana and Patrick D. from Virginia. So thank you both.
Thank you both. And then I think that may be everything. So did I miss anything, Mother?
I don't think so.
Okay. So for prayer intentions, I told a couple stories last night in my talk, and it struck me when I was writing my talk, actually, while we were driving Abigail up there. And I said I need a few minutes to kind of prepare my talk. And one of the things that came at that point, because I had written a bit of it, was just how, this is thinking of Joan of Arc, just how unique women's crosses are, especially, and how I think a lot of men don't understand those crosses. I gave my talk on the cross and exaltation of the cross. And so I'm thinking of a few of my spiritual daughters, especially those who have Joan of Arc as their patron. There's a few of them that do, and how they, like, why they chose this very strong woman as their patron. It kind of reveals, I think, who they are, who they want to be, how they see the church, how they see their role. So just pray for women, especially who will say are inspired by Joan of Arc, that they may truly become more like her in her strength, in her leadership, in her submission to God's will, and in the sacrifice of her martyrdom. Mother?
I will ask for prayers for my spiritual son, Lucas, who is totally fine with me sharing his name, but who I met him at Seek last year. So, and that, please nobody take that prayer intention to, like, I can't take any more spiritual children. And so it's not, I don't want everyone thinking like, oh, I'm going to go to Seek and ask Mother to be my spiritual mother. But so prayers for Lucas. He's just a very dear heart. And if any single ladies out there want to, anyways, pray for Lucas. So, yeah. Abigail?
I would say I want it to primarily be like a prayer of thanksgiving. This visit to California was very last minute and really needed, and was only possible by and with the generosity of people out here, especially in particular Father Michael, but everyone who like helped give me rides or offered to host me or paid for a coffee. So just in thanksgiving for all those people who showed forth their love, and then for the lightening of their crosses or any of their intentions. So too many to name. But just for all the generous, loving people out here in California. Yeah.
My mom always used to pray for our benefactors every night at prayer. And I always thought, I was like, I don't even know who all our benefactors were. My mom knew people were very generous with us when we were kids and our family. And so she would pray for our benefactors. I didn't even know what that meant when I was a kid, but I learned that I was like, it's so beautiful that my mom is thanking God for those who have helped us every single night at prayer. So you notice sometimes during the great entrance, I will say, for all of our friends, neighbors, benefactors, and those who love us. I added those who love us, but that the first ones came from my mother. That's how she'd always say it at prayer every night. Friends, neighbors, family, and benefactors.
Beautiful. Thanks, Abigail. It was so fun having you on. I'm glad you're going to stay on for the next one too.
Thank you. Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you for having me.
You can see how the sausage is made now, as they say.
Yep.
I hate when you use that phrase. It's so weird.
Have you ever seen sausage made? It would be even weirder if you did. You would hate it even more.
Okay. Abigail, I love you, even though we don't know each other that well. Father Michael, I love you in all your weirdness.
I love you too in your non-weirdness. I love you too, Abigail.
Love you, Father.
That's cute. You know I'm super weird. Can you please give us a blessing?
Of course. May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May our Lord allow you to understand his call, his vocation, what your daily, your weekly, your yearly, and your lifelong vocations are. When he says, follow me, may you have great zeal in what he's asking of you, and also submit to the fact that it is impossible, the vocations that he calls us to. We need him every step of the way, and may you see that as a good thing. May you desire to be purged of any encumbering sin, whether it's manipulation, whether it's shame, whether it's pride, whatever that may be, that you may find a good community and be open to what God's doing in your life, and conventions you go to, relationships you have, relationships you make, the guidance of speakers, the holy sacraments, and all these things. May you see these as great benefits that truly call us onto good conversion and onto joy. May the Lord bless you, give you everything you need, even the salvation of your soul. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.